Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's InterTalk webinar, Smart Control Rooms, Detecting Deepfakes and Emotions with AI. My name is Nick Blackmore, Sales and Marketing Manager here at InterTalk, and I'll be your host for this session. We're excited to have you with us as we explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping the future of mission-critical communication. In today's control rooms, where seconds matter and clarity is crucial, technologies like speech emotion recognition and voice deepfake detections are quickly becoming desired tools. These technologies can help dispatchers and operators not only recognize emotional urgency in a caller's voice, but also identify synthetic voices that could otherwise mislead responders or disrupt operations. In today's session, we will delve into how these innovations can strengthen communication verification systems, reduce false alarms, and improve response prioritization in critical environments. With that said, it is a pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Salma Fairs. Dr. Fairs received her Master's of Applied Science in Electrical Engineering and her PhD in Wireless Communications from the University of Quebec, followed by a fellowship at Tohoku University in Japan, where she specialized in advanced algorithms for ad hoc wireless communications. Her career has included roles as a research scientist at Ultra Maritime, working alongside Atlantic Defense Research and Development Canada, and since 2013, she's been a vital part of the InterTalk team. She currently serves as our Technical Research Chair, where she drives forward innovation in signal processing, machine learning, and cybersecurity, all within the context of mission-critical communications. Before we begin today, just a quick note regarding today's Q&A format. We won't be doing a traditional live Q&A at the end. Instead, we provided a QR code now visible on your screen. You can scan it at any time during the webinar to submit your questions directly to InterTalk, and we encourage you to send these questions as they arise, and we'll ensure you receive a thoughtful response after the session. With that all said, Salma, I'm happy to pass it over to you to continue.
Thank you, Nick. So hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. In this presentation, I will be sharing insights on detecting audio deepfake and the emotion used in AI in smart control room, a topic that's become really important in critical communication environments. But before that, I would like you to imagine a scenario. So for example, let's say, we are working a shift at the dispatch center when a call comes in, and the voice sounds for you really similar. It is a trusted police officer that you have worked with for years. They report a serious incident at a known location and request an immediate backup. So you run your verification. Everything sounds really good, right? So you dispatch your unit. But a minute later, when the team arrive, they find the scene empty, no incident. The police officer was not there. And when you call back the police officer to check their location, they said that they never made that call. So what does mean? It was really a deep fake. But the issue, it was not just a deep fake. They are not just tricking people here. It was a setup. So while your team were busy on that fake emergency, something far more serious was happening across the town. Maybe a break-in, maybe an attack that was planned precisely when your resources were there. So this is the emergency thread of audio deepfake. So here, we are not talking about just deceptive. So they are really strategic. So they exploit the urgency and trust built into emergency system to mislead, divert, and also interrupt the emergency communication system. So in this presentation, we will explore together how AI can help us detect this kind of threat by recognizing deepfake voice and also by analyzing emotion cues that are present in such manipulated audio deepfake. First, start taking a quick look on what we will cover in this presentation. First, we will talk about the challenges that are present in critical communication system. And after that, we will talk about the role of AI in a smart control room. And also we will share some insights from a recent survey that we conducted with dispatchers. After that, we will define deepfake, how they are created, how they can be detected, and also how emotion can help on detecting audio deepfake. And at the end, we discuss the limitation and challenges that we faced when implementing such audio deepfake model. As you may know, emergency communication systems face several critical challenges, such as high call volume, limited resources, real-time data processing, language and accent barriers, cybersecurity risk, and fraud and deepfake calls. And this is where artificial intelligence can enhance the workflow of dispatchers. So how? By automating call triage, streamlining workflows, rapidly processing data, and also enhance speech recognition or add some transcription or add some translation to have dispatcher to understand what's going on the call if the caller has such hard accent or mixing with languages, and also by monitoring cybersecurity threat and detecting fraud and deepfake call, which will be discussed in this presentation. We have seen so far how AI can significantly benefit from smart control rooms. But to understand what kind of AI technology dispatchers need, we recently conducted a survey targeting people on the front line. So our goal was to understand how dispatchers believe AI can enhance their work. So in the survey, we asked our participants several questions. And one of them was, in which area do you believe AI could be most beneficial in your field? So the result was like 85% believe that AI can be useful for real-time location tracking, while 70% believe that it can be used to analyze and summarize audio and enhance quality, and 40% believe that can be used for emergency corporatization. But only 20% believe that it can be used for audio defect detection, which can indicate that many still are unaware of the audio deepfake threat in critical communication. So that's why we still need to raise awareness about this kind of threat. So what is a deepfake? A deepfake is a type of advanced AI technique that generates highly realistic but completely manipulated content. It can include text, audio, image, or video. And the word deepfake is coming from two terms, deep learning and fake content. It means that this kind of content was created using a deep learning technology, but the content is completely fake. So today we will talk about more audio deepfake technology. So while the term audio deepfake often carries a negative connotation, it can also have some positive application across various industries, as we can see here, for example. It's already used in healthcare and education, tourism, for language translation, and also for automated chatbot, and more often in entertainment. But just recently, what we start to think about audio deepfake as a threat, because while this, as we saw before, it was already used in a positive way, but it's becoming more dangerous if it is applied in critical communication, and that's why it is so important for us to stay ahead, especially in environment like control or in general in critical communication, when a signal counts. How audio deepfakes are created? So usually there are three main methods that can be used to generate audio deepfake. So the first one, text-to-speech, that is used to convert written text directly to realistic speech audio. The next one is, we call it a voice conversion. This method maps one person's voice characteristics into another's. So essentially, this technique takes existing voice recording and transform them to mimic another person's vocal features and style. So the objective here is to make it appear as if the target person said something that they never actually said. The third one is GAN, or generative adversarial network. So this one involves two neural networks. So the first one we call it generator. So it's the one that creates a fake audio or fake content, while the other one that we call it, this is the one that evaluates its authenticity by comparing the synthesized audio generated from the generator with some real audio sample. So through this adversarial process, the generator learned to produce convincing audio deepfake. Yeah, so now that we understand the risk of this such audio deepfake, and also we provide some method that can be used to create audio deepfake. So let's test how convincing audio deepfake can actually be. So here I will play 3 short audio clips where some of them are real, some of them are fake or are AI generated. And as you listen, try to guess which one is real and which one is fake. Okay, so let's say we play the first one.
Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural due to changes in the sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions.
Okay, so we play the second one.
I can't breathe. My mommy, and she's not waking up. Please, we need help.
And the third one.
Hello, my name is Jessica. I'm living at 2456 Summer Street. Someone who broke into my house. I can hear them downstairs. Oh, I'm scared. I think they're coming. We're hiding up in the bathroom. Please hurry up, send the police.
So how did you do here? So maybe you spot the fake audio or maybe not. Many of you may have been able to tell the difference between fake and real audio, because here we are expecting to hear some fake audio. But imagine being a dispatcher under such a pressure situation, needing to make a decision in a split of second. So this kind of deepfake call, especially when also enhanced with background urgency, like for example, when they can also add some like a gunshot background or like fire alarm to simulate an emergency situation. It can really be very convincing. So just to let you know, the first one, it was the one that the original audio, the real audio. The second one was a fake audio that was generated from the first one by using voice conversion technique, while the third one was also a fake audio that was generated using text-to-speech. So as you can see that the first one and second one, maybe they sound really almost identical, but there is some subtle difference between both of them. While the third one, we can also feel some emotion that was generated using AI technique, even if it was used only via text-to-speech. Okay, so this is why audio deepfake detection is really crucial here. So here we cannot really rely on our ears alone to make the difference between real and fake audio. So we need some smarter tools like an AI technique to help us make this decision or make this difference between real emergencies and deceptive audio deepfake calls. So now, as we have seen how audio deepfake are created, so let's talk about how it can be detected. So usually there are 2 main methods. For example, I think I've shown here. So the first one, that we call it low-level acoustic feature analysis. The second one is the one that is based on machine learning and deepfake learning. So the first approach examines sound property like frequency spectrum, pitch, energy, and we try to detect some anomaly there. For example, let's say we will move to the next slide here. So we can see here we plot the spectrum of the real and the deepfake voice. So usually using the first method, we extract the spectrum as a feature to detect any anomaly that is present in audio deepfake. As you can see in this example, usually the experts can use this spectrum to extract some keys. For example, they can identify real from a deepfake voice by analyzing some keys, like for example, spectrum continuity. So usually the real voice shows some smooth transition, while deepfake may have some abrupt cutoff. And also they can also study some harmonic structure and the energy distribution. Usually in the real voice, the energy should be distributed over the whole spectrum. While in the audio deepfake, we can see some cut, like you can see it on the one and on the right side, you can see the energy, it is not spread over the whole spectrum. And also they can also detect some noise and artifacts. But in general, this indicator help indeed the expert to make a difference between real and audio deepfake. But more when this kind of audio deepfake technology becoming is advancing, becoming more sophisticated, these keys can sometimes be hidden, and making deepfakes even more sophisticated and hard to be detected. And that's why we must use some AI technique to effectively detect them. And that we will move to the next slide. Here we usually, if you want to detect an audio deepfake using machine learning or deep learning, we need first to follow an organized approach. So the first one, but we need to collect data. Collecting data, I mean that we need to gather a real human voice from reliable sources. This is the first thing. And after that, when we are happy with our data, we need to generate a replica of it using AI generated, because we need to train our model on real and fake data that are labeled, and after that evaluate our model to see if my model can detect or can make a difference between both of them. And once we generate this real data, we have to do some pre-processing. So pre-processing here, it can be, for example, removing background noise, converting data to have the same rate, normalize the volume level, and so on. And after that, when we have the data and we do this pre-processing, we can say that now I have my data that can be used to train my model. After that, we extract some feature that can be used like input from my model. So I can use one feature, I can combine several features. For example, here we can extract like spectrum, or we can extract energy, or we can also study the voice identity feature. So there are several features that can be used to like input from my model. After that, we select the model or the training model that I want to use. But before that, I need to split my data to training and testing. So usually the training is like 70% or 75%, and testing it's between 20 to 25% of my data. And once my data sets are split, I can use my training to train my model. So first I need to select my model here, and it's depend on what kind of model I want to use and what kind of training. For example, I can train using like CNN. At that time, I need to extract the spectrum that can be used like an image to my model, or I can do that in time domain. And after that, once my model is trained, I can use also my validation data to fine tune my model. And when I'm happy with it, so I can save it. After that, I can back to evaluate my model using my testing data. So my testing data are the data that was not seen by my model. And after that, once the model is trained, it can be deployed in real-time detection. And for each incoming voice is analyzed, and the system assign a confidence score. For example, for this specific voice, I can say that I have 90% confident that it is real, and lower confident that, for example, 10% that it is fake. So this is the general idea how we can train our model to detect an audio deepfake. But when we start thinking about that, what about if we could go beyond using acoustic and spectral feature, for example? What if you could analyze how something is said, but not just what is said? So this led us to explore the role of emotion, because when speech is manipulated or synthesized, the emotion, sometimes this emotion expression is often the first thing to detect or the first thing to be lost. So speech, usually in general, speech is more than just word. So it carries emotion, and the emotion isn't just about what we say, it's also about how we say it. For example, if I say I'm fine, if it's said softly and slowly, it might suggest that I'm sad, right? But if you said real loudly with some sharp pitch, it means that I'm angry. This emotion expression is often hard for deepfake model to mimic accurately. So by analyzing emotional consistency, we can catch some unnatural patterns. So that can help us to detect or to make the difference between real and deepfake voice in such short clip. Okay, so here, as I mentioned before, so the first one that I explained was like a baseline model for audio detection. And here we add an extra layer that we can see in this figure, extra layer for emotion detection. So this can help or can enhance audio deepfake detection. So by analyzing both content and delivery. So the process here, first, as explained before, we do some picture extraction, and the same thing, we do some emotional classification. So here, emotional classification, it is another neural network that is added here that analyzes the emotional tone on the speech to determine the expressed emotions. Can be, for example, if this sentence was said with a happy emotion, so what is the label that we can tag this sentence, for example, if it is happy, if it is angry, if it is sad, and so on. And after that, we use the same model, but we can see here we have an extra input here that is coming from this neural network that has the tag of my emotion that was said on my sentence. And after that, we compare. So what we do, we compare the expected emotion. So what does mean that if this detected emotion is cross-checked with expected emotion based on content and the speaker identity. So what does mean that if the system detects some mismatch between what was said and what really the current emotion, so it check whether that emotion align with what would normally expect given the context of the conversation and the speaker's typical emotional tone. So if there is any mismatch between the real and manipulated emotional cues, may indicate that it is a deepfake audio. So in general, if the voice is flagged as a deepfake or the emotion doesn't align naturally, so at that time we can say that the system will flag it like a manipulated audio. So this additional layer that was added to our baseline audio deepfake model help us to detect any audio deepfake that was created while the emotion doesn't really match what was really said in the audio. As I mentioned earlier, when developing our deepfake model, first I mentioned that we need to collect real data for human voice, and after that replicated using some AI tools. So first I began by collecting a labeled real data set with emotion such as, for example, happiness, surprise, and anger. And then I generate a corresponding fake data set using several deepfake techniques, for example, text-to-speech or voice conversion and so on. However, I observed that this synthetic speech often fails to preserve the same range of emotion. And why, for example, I can tell you here for visual representation, a real voice is far from intricate, so shaped by natural vocal cord vibration and individual vocal track structure, while audio deepfake often appear really more monotone. So in our analysis, our dataset was almost balanced, the same amount of clips that have a special emotion was exactly the same, except for neutral. But when we convert this data set using AI technique, we found that some emotion was lost, as shown here in this figure. So the blue one is the one that is related to my real speech. So I can see that my emotions are almost the same. Number of audio clips that have some specific emotion are almost the same. But when I created the replica using AI technique, you can see the gray one, you can see the neutral jump from 30% to 52%. And what does mean that our technique really struggled to generate some emotion and it was not necessary for one technique, because we try text to speech and also voice conversion. And this is really important to note that our real data set at the start was balanced across all emotional categories to ensure that this discrepancy was not coming from my AI technique. So here I would like to present the results that we got. So I have two figures here. The first one is the Turing accuracy over epoch. The second one is the loss. So here we are plotting the result that we will obtain using the two models. The first one, the baseline model, and the second one that we call it emotional enhanced model, the one that has this extra emotion layer. So we can see that, for example, here, the first one, for the Turing accuracy, that the baseline model achieved 87% accuracy. However, when we integrate emotion recognition, we can see that there is some enhancement. So the accuracy reached 92%. So this 5% improvement demonstrates that by analyzing emotional patterns, boosts our audio defect detection model. Okay, so so here I would like to talk about the limitation and the challenges that we faced when implementing our audio deepfake. So the first one was limited data that are available and tailored to critical communication. So usually when we want to implement my model and I want to say that this model can be implemented in critical communication to detect audio deepfake, it should be trained using datasets that are trained for critical communication. And why? Because datasets that are especially related to critical communication has its own keys. So the first one is the vocabulary. So when you are talking about that critical communication conversation, they have their own vocabulary that we cannot really find in our open source dataset. For example, we cannot find a word like fire, help me, some words that are really needed and present only in critical communication conversation. So what does mean that I cannot use an open data set and train my model. And at the end, I will say that my model can be applied on critical communication system. So it needs to be trained using such data sets that are really tailored to critical communication. And not only that, but also the background. Critical communication conversation, they have their own background. When you are listening to such conversation, you can hear some background, for example, a siren, like for example, a gun shooting, people screaming, some background that is really specific for this environment. So the challenge that we found that when we were training our model, we found very limited data that are applied for critical communication. And also diversity. When we are talking about critical communication, we are expecting that anyone can call 911. 5 years old can call 911. A senior that has a problem to articulate and explain what's going on the scene. So all of this kind of conversation that is really diverse need to be present on your data set and to train your model. And also diversity, when I'm talking about accents, we need to expect to have a wide range of accents. And also real-time detection. If your model is really complex, it cannot be implemented in critical communication system, because here we are talking about live, we are talking about split of second. The dispatcher need to make a decision, so you cannot wait for your model to get an answer or to flag if the call is real or not. And the same thing for detection error consequence. What about if your model flag a real call as a fake? This can be really dangerous. And when I was looking for regulation and policy, I didn't really find some universal standard or ethical guideline for deepfake detection. And as I mentioned on our survey, when I found that only 20% thought that AI can be used for audio deepfake detection, it means that the people right now, they are not really aware about how dangerous audio deepfake can be if it hits critical communication system. So more education and training are needed for responders and also for general public. So now that we explore the challenges of audio defect detection, let's focus a little bit about the solution. So public safety play a crucial role in safeguarding emergency communication, but here we want to just show how they can ensure security. So for example, by implementing AI-powered defect screening in dispatch system, and also what about use AI-driven voice authentication to verify the caller identity and to establish a robust verification protocol for high-risk calls, and invest also in training dispatchers to recognize the defect, to recognize some cues that can help to identify audio defect, and of course to increase awareness among first responders and law enforcement. And one thing that I find is really more important is to collaborate with AI experts and policymaker and public safety agency. So as a conclusion here, AI is transforming critical communication for better and for worse, for sure. And the fake threats are real and require immediate attention. During our study, we found that audio defect technique is not always, that sometimes can fail to mimic the emotion. So this speech emotion recognition that is combined with audio defect detection can help to prioritize and secure emergency response operation. And we need also to establish a stronger protocol and AI tools that can help mitigate risk. And also we need also to raise awareness about this kind of threat in not necessarily in the public safety environment, but also in the general public. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Salma, for that insightful presentation. As we mentioned before at the beginning of the webinar, we are doing a Q&A that is based off Google Forms. So if you do have a question about anything that you saw or heard today, you can scan the QR code that you currently see on your screen to get access to the Google form, and we will get back to you as soon as possible with an answer for that as well. Now, we don't want to leave you entirely hanging, as we did have a few questions that were pre-submitted before the webinar. And I just wanted to posit those questions to you, Salma, just before we close for the day. So the first question that we had submitted to Salma was, why is audio deepfakes becoming a growing concern? We're suddenly hearing a lot more about it. And the second part of this question is, what led you to explore this topic in your research?
Yeah, that is a really great question. Audio deepfake are becoming a concern now because the technology to create them has advanced very fast in such short period of time. And what used to take an expert or a large team to do that, now anyone can do it. Anyone has access to create audio deepfake using AI tools online. So these fake voices can sound identical to real people right now. They are becoming really sophisticated. So they can even replicate tone, pitch, emotion. In general, a critical communication environment like emergency dispatch, where voice is the main tool for trust and decision making. So this becomes especially really dangerous. So a fake call could lead to sending units to the wrong place, as I explained in my first slide, the scenario that I gave before. What led me to explore this area? So during my work in critical communication, I realized that while we had tools to authenticate devices or system, we were not really checking the voice itself. And that is where we should pay attention. I decided to dig deeper, especially in understanding how AI cannot detect the fake, but also use emotional pattern to catch the fake. That sounds really too perfect for me.
Thank you for that, Salma. Our second question comes from somebody who has a little bit of experience in working with audio deepfakes themselves, probably utilize some of the tools that you've mentioned as well that are available to the public. And it really comes down to, if a deepfake can be so advanced and carry those emotional cues, how can your model still detect that it is an audio deepfake compared to a real voice?
Yeah, so you are absolutely right. So some of the latest audio deepfake models have become remarkable, convincing, even replicating emotion and tone, for sure. But here, is the key. When we are hearing audio deepfake, we can hear emotion, but this emotion is not really consistent. And this is what the AI is used to check this consistency. So our model doesn't just look for emotion in like isolation. No, it looks for emotional consistency across the whole speech, across the speech patterns and contexts. For example, a real person's anger or urgency tend to follow natural fluctuations in pitch, speed, and intensity over time. But for the deepfakes, even advanced one, I mean, like advanced tools, can often introduce some subtle artifact that are really slightly unnatural. I mean, that we cannot really detect it by using our ear, but AI can detect it. So yeah, we're not really talking about emotion, but we are talking about consistency in the emotion here.
And I have one final question here that actually goes over a pretty good aspect of this. As we've seen, deepfake technology has been evolving rapidly. It's moving very quickly. What was, the top of the line last year in regards to like audio and video deepfakes has been totally blown away as like programs like ChatGPT have gone through and updated their models. So one thing we wanted to ask was, once your model is trained and actually is deployed on the client side, how is it possible to keep that system up to date? Yeah, especially as well as when we talk about systems that are entirely on premises too.
Yeah, so in general, our approach is designed to be adaptive. So why, of course, the initial model is trained using a data set, right? And it should be using a wide variety of real and synthetic data. And we also enable on-premise fine-tuning and continual learning. So this means that after deployment, the system can be adapted locally based on client-specific audio patterns and feedback loops, so without needing to share any sensitive data externally. So for example, if an operator flags a suspicious call, so that input can be used to refine the model locally on site. So over time, the system learns the context and the audio environment of that particular client, particular dispatch center. So it's making it more personalized and more resilient to involving threat for that specific critical communication environment. We plan to release periodic secure updates that introduce new detection strategy based on emerging deepfake trends, similar to how antivirus software is doing, right? So we also have this option we want to include in our release process.
Thank you so much, Salma. That was all the questions that we had today. Unless there's any final thoughts from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm happy that I'm sharing my thoughts and the challenges that we were facing where implementing such kind of audio deepfake. And I'm happy to be with you today.
We are happy to listen as well, Salma. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We hope you have a great day.